The wind had a voice on this planet. It whistled through jagged rock formations and whispered over the dusty plains, carrying grains of red sand that glittered faintly in the twin moon's pale light. Elias Cade leaned against the wooden frame of his homestead, hands tucked into worn leather gloves, eyes scanning the horizon as he traced the jagged silhouettes of distant mesas. He was a man who had grown used to solitude, and solitude had grown used to him. The homestead itself was simple but sturdy, a mix of metal panels salvaged from old terraforming stations and rough-cut timber from the few trees the planet could support. The solar panels atop the roof creaked in the wind, and a small wind turbine spun lazily, humming like a tired old dog. Despite its haphazard construction, the home had survived storms that would have torn most structures apart. Elias liked it that way. The homestead had character, it had resilience, and most importantly, it had quiet. He didn't notice her at first. Mara Venn appeared over the rise like a ghost in the dusty haze. She was small, slight, but moved with purpose, carrying a makeshift pack that looked heavier than she was. Her hair, sun-bleached to a pale copper, whipped around her face in the wind, and her eyes, a bright green, flicked nervously from the landscape to the homestead. Elias straightened, shifting his weight to his other leg. He had seen travelers before, though rarely anyone who made it this far. Usually, they were scouts, traders, or the occasional lost explorer folks desperate for water, shelter, or a map off the planet. But there was something about her, something deliberate in her step, something that spoke of survival, not panic. "Evening," she called out when she reached the base of the slope, voice trembling slightly but steady enough to carry. I need a place to stay," Elias squinted. "Evening. You got a name, stranger?" "Mara. Mara Venn." She dropped her pack onto the ground with a soft thud and rested her hands on her hips. "I can cook. I can clean. I can work for a place to sleep. For food." He raised an eyebrow. Most people who stumbled here were used to begging, groveling, or offering nothing at all. Her approach was different, direct, practical. "And what makes you think I need a cook?" Elias asked, his voice low and measured, carrying a hint of amusement. Mara smiled faintly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "I don't. But I thought maybe we could help each other." Elias studied her for a long moment, and she didn't flinch. That alone earned a small nod of respect from him. She had grit. That was rare. "Shelter's not free," he said finally, voice cutting through the wind. "And meals. Well, I'm particular about my meals. But," he paused, scratching his stubbled chin. "There is one condition." Mara's brow lifted. "Condition?" He leaned against the wooden post again, eyes glinting in the moonlight. "You have to make me laugh." Mara blinked, taken aback. "Laugh?" "Yes, laugh." He shrugged. "I live alone. Silence it's loud sometimes. I need someone to fill it with something better than wind and dust." For a moment, Mara stared at him, unsure if he was joking. Then, slowly, a smile tugged at her lips. "That's unusual." "Unusual's my middle name," Elias said with a grin, and then corrected himself. "Well, it would be, if I had a middle name." She laughed. It was soft at first, hesitant, but genuine. The kind of laughter that carries warmth. Elias nodded once, approvingly. "All right then, you cook, you clean, and you make me laugh. You've got a deal." Mara dropped to her knees to open her pack. Inside, a few pots and pans, some dried food, and a small stack of recipe notes peeked out. Not much, but enough. She started unpacking while Elias watched, curious despite himself. "Where did you learn to cook in the middle of nowhere?" he asked. "Loneliness teaches you," Mara said without looking up. "And a little stubbornness. You either learn, or you don't eat." He chuckled. "Sounds about right." As night fell, Mara began preparing a simple meal. There was little to work with: some dehydrated vegetables, a few grains, and the alien herbs she had collected during her travels, but she worked with careful precision, humming softly to herself. The smell of toasted grain and simmering broth drifted through the wind, wrapping around the homestead like a small, protective cloud. Elias leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching her. He didn't often have company, not in years. And not anyone like this. He felt the stirrings of something he hadn't felt in a long time. Anticipation. "So," he said, trying to hide a smirk, "you think you can make me laugh before I eat?" Mara glanced up, eyebrows raised. "Do you want to be entertained? Or do you want to survive the meal?" "Both," he said immediately, and she laughed again. Dinner was humble. Grain stew thickened with alien root, a few roasted tubers, and water that Elias had filtered through a slow chemical process. But the conversation light, teasing, filled with small jokes and observations, made the food taste richer. For the first time in years, Elias felt the quiet lift, replaced with a gentle, warm hum of connection. "You're good at this," he admitted after a pause, reaching for a second helping. Mara shrugged modestly. "I've had practice. Being alone teaches you tricks too." He nodded thoughtfully. "Funny, isn't it? How we both survived by ourselves, but neither of us really lived." Her eyes softened, and she didn't answer immediately. Instead, she poured them each another cup of water, the faint metallic tang mingling with the aroma of the meal. The wind outside had died down to a gentle hum. The twin moons rose higher, casting silver light over the dusty plains, making the red rocks shimmer like molten metal. Inside the homestead, it felt like a small pocket of safety, a bubble carved out from the endless wilds beyond. Elias leaned back in his chair, eyes closing for a brief moment. "All right," he said quietly. "I'll admit it. You made me laugh today. Not much, but enough." Mara smiled, settling down across from him. "It'll get better," he chuckled, a sound that seemed foreign even to his own ears. "I hope so. I'd hate to be disappointed after such a promising start." They ate in companionable silence for a while, only the occasional comment or small chuckle breaking the quiet. The homestead no longer seemed like a place merely to survive. It had begun to feel like a home. Later, when Mara washed the dishes in the small basin she had set up, Elias stepped outside to look at the stars. He let himself breathe deeply, taking in the alien constellations above. He had been alone for so long that he'd forgotten how it felt to share space with another human being. Not for work, not for survival, but for something softer, more enduring. Somewhere behind him, Mara hummed a tune he didn't recognize, a melody both strange and comforting. It made him smile, and for the first time in a long time, he felt hopeful. The frontier planet was vast, lonely, and often merciless. But tonight, in this small homestead under alien stars, two strangers had carved out a fragile, beautiful corner of connection. And somewhere between the dust, the wind, and the twin moons, Elias Cade realized that perhaps survival wasn't enough. Perhaps it was laughter, companionship, and small acts of kindness that truly mattered. He turned back to the doorway, where Mara was now drying her hands and smiling at him. "I suppose we'll see if you can keep your end of the bargain," he said, his tone teasing. She laughed, and the sound carried warmth. "Oh, I intend to. You won't regret it." Outside, the wind shifted again, carrying red sand and the faint scent of alien herbs. But inside, in the small glow of the homestead, laughter small, fragile, and human had taken root. And Elias Cade, old cowboy of the frontier, found himself grateful. For the first time in a long time, he felt at home. The next morning, Mara woke to the soft hum of the wind turbine and the gentle creaking of the solar panels. Outside, the twin moons had sunk below the horizon, leaving a pale sun rising over the red plains. Elias was already up, tending a small water collector he had rigged the night before. He glanced at Mara, who was still tucked under a threadbare blanket on the floor mattress she had claimed in a corner of the homestead. "Morning," he said, his voice gravelly but warm. "You sleep well?" Mara stretched, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. "Better than I have in a while," she admitted. "This place, it's quiet, but not empty." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Quiet, but not empty. That's an interesting way to put it." He grinned faintly, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "I like it. Makes you sound poetic," she chuckled. "Maybe, or maybe it's just honest." Breakfast was simple. Toasted grain cakes with a thin spread of nut paste Mara had made from alien seeds, and water mixed with a pinch of local herbs. She cooked efficiently, moving between the small stove, the counter, and the table with practiced ease. Elias watched her, leaning against the doorframe, sipping water. "You're good at this," he said again, more seriously this time. "Not just cooking. You make it look easy." Mara smiled faintly. "I've had practice. Loneliness teaches you tricks." "Loneliness?" he repeated, intrigued. "You mean the same loneliness we both have been running from?" She nodded. "Something like that. When you're alone long enough, you learn to take care of yourself. But sometimes, you also learn what you're missing." Elias hummed thoughtfully. He wasn't sure what to say. He had grown used to being alone, to the wind and dust being his only company. He didn't mind solitude, but Mara's presence made him realize he hadn't really thought about what it meant to live with someone else. Someone human, with warmth, humor, and curiosity. After breakfast, Mara helped Elias repair a loose panel on the homestead's roof while joking about the precariousness of frontier life. "One day," she said, "I'm going to fall off this roof, and you'll have to tell my ghost jokes to keep yourself entertained." Elias laughed, a low rumble that seemed to shake the dust from the walls. "You'd better hope you don't. I'm terrible at ghost jokes." As they worked together, she learned the rhythm of his life, checking the solar arrays, tightening the water pipes, and inspecting the wind turbine for loose bolts. She didn't just follow instructions. She asked questions, curious about every tool, every wire, every strange gadget he had cobbled together from old colony tech. "You've got an interesting life here," she said finally, wiping sweat from her brow. "Not many people could survive alone like this." Elias shrugged. "It's not about survival. It's about habit. You get used to being alone. You get used to the wind, the dust, the sky. You learn to be patient. And sometimes," he added with a faint smile, "you even start talking to yourself." Mara laughed. "I think I've been doing that for years, but I never knew anyone else did." By mid-afternoon, the pair had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Mara prepared a simple lunch of grain bowls, mixed with roasted root vegetables, while Elias tended to the small garden he had coaxed from the barren soil. Alien herbs and a few hardy tubers had taken root under his care, and he pointed out each plant with pride. "These are stubborn," he said, holding up a small green sprout. "Survive the harsh sun, the cold nights, and a lot worse than that like me." Mara laughed, kneeling beside him to examine the sprout. "I like stubborn," she said. "It's human. Or maybe just frontier human." Elias grinned. "Frontier human, huh? I like that. Makes it sound heroic." They ate together, sharing small jokes and stories about the places they had come from. Mara told Elias about the research colony she had worked in, a place full of scientists and explorers who had loved discovery more than comfort. She spoke of lonely nights studying alien plants, of storms that forced them into cramped shelters, and of the small victories that made it all worthwhile. Elias listened, fascinated, and sometimes offered small comments that made her laugh. "You know," he said at one point, "I never thought I'd be jealous of a greenhouse." Mara laughed so hard she nearly spilled her water. "You'd survive better with a greenhouse," she admitted, "but you'd still talk to yourself." As evening approached, the two stood outside, looking up at the sky. The twin moons rose slowly, casting pale silver light over the red plains. The wind had softened, leaving the world quiet except for the faint hum of the homestead's machinery. "You ever think about how lonely this planet is?" Mara asked, voice soft. "Even with life, even with plants, it's still empty." Elias nodded. "All the time. But that emptiness makes the moments that matter bigger. Makes people matter more. When someone finally shows up, it changes everything." Mara looked at him, seeing the flicker of hope in his eyes, a hope that had lain dormant for years. "I think that's why I keep moving," she said. "Looking for those moments. Looking for someone or someplace that feels like home." Elias smiled faintly. "Well, you've found one corner of it. At least." That night, they shared a simple dinner of roasted tubers, grain porridge, and a few alien herbs Mara had added for flavor. The food was humble, but the conversation was rich. They shared small jokes, teasing each other about clumsiness, strange habits, and the quirks of frontier life. For the first time, Elias felt the homestead truly alive, not just as a shelter, but as a home, filled with laughter and human warmth. After dinner, Mara cleaned the small dishes, while Elias leaned back in his chair, watching her with quiet amusement. "You know," he said slowly, "you're keeping your end of the bargain." Mara glanced up, drying her hands. "I hope so. You'll have to tell me if I fail." Elias shook his head. "No chance of failure. Not yet, anyway. Keep it up, and you might make me laugh so hard I forget I'm old." She laughed again, the sound filling the homestead like music. "I'll take that as a challenge," she said. Later, when the chores were done, they settled outside on a small bench, sharing stories under the twin moons. Mara recounted adventures from her research colony encounters with alien plants, experiments that went wrong in funny ways, moments when humans had surprised themselves. Elias told tales of the early days on the frontier, of the days when humans first arrived on this planet, of mistakes, lessons, and small victories that had kept him going. The night passed slowly, each story, each laugh weaving a quiet bond between them. The frontier was still vast, still lonely, but it didn't feel so empty anymore. In the gentle glow of alien moons, they found something neither had expected: companionship. By the time they returned inside, the homestead was warm and welcoming. Mara prepared the small bed in the corner, and Elias set about checking the water systems and lights. The silence was no longer heavy or empty. It was calm, filled with the quiet satisfaction of survival and the new comfort of shared life. Elias finally leaned back in his chair, sipping water, and said softly, "You know, I didn't expect this. Not from anyone. Not ever." Mara smiled, climbing into her blanket. "Neither did I. But maybe that's the point. Maybe it's not about expecting, it's about finding." He nodded, looking out the small window at the alien sky, stars sparkling like tiny fireflies. Outside, the wind rustled the red sands, carrying with it the faint scent of alien herbs and distant rock formations. Inside, laughter lingered in the air. Subtle but persistent. A small, human echo in a vast, indifferent world. And in that echo, both Elias and Mara felt the fragile stirrings of hope, warmth, and home. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The next morning, the sun rose pale and thin over the dusty plains, casting long shadows across Elias's homestead. Mara was already outside, kneeling in the small garden where the hardy alien tubers and herbs grew. Her hands were dark with soil, her fingers gently pressing down around the roots, as if coaxing life from the stubborn red earth. Elias stepped out beside her, hands tucked into his pockets. "You really like this, don't you?" he asked. Mara looked up, brushing sweat from her brow. "I do. Watching life grow, it makes the day feel worth it. Makes you feel connected to something bigger than yourself." Elias nodded slowly. He had spent years maintaining the homestead, repairing machines, and surviving storms. But he had rarely thought about the small rhythms of life, the quiet, persistent growth of plants, or the soft changes in weather. Mara had a way of noticing these things, of appreciating them in ways he hadn't considered. "Maybe that's why you're still alive," he said quietly. "Not just because of skill, but because you care. You notice things." She smiled faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe it's just luck. But I like to think it's a little of both." They worked together in the garden for hours, laughing over small mistakes, Elias knocking over a pot of herbs, Mara misjudging a measurement of water. Their laughter was easy now, filling the homestead with warmth. Even the wind seemed to soften around them, whispering over the plains in gentle swirls. Later, while Mara prepared lunch, she noticed something strange. The small plants they had been tending seemed to be responding differently to her touch than they had the day before. The roots pushed upward, leaves unfurling faster than normal, and the herbs released a stronger fragrance than expected. "Elias," she called, curiosity lighting her eyes. "Come here. Look at this." He came quickly, squinting at the plants. "They're growing faster. I don't remember them moving this quickly before. I think the planet is listening," Mara said slowly, almost to herself. "Not like a person listens, but it responds. When we care for it, it cares back." Elias frowned. "You mean the soil is alive? The air? The plants?" She nodded. "In a way. There's something here, an old system, maybe even alien in origin. It reacts to us, to what we give. Not just survival, but attention, care, joy." He looked at her, a slow smile spreading across his face. Mara shrugged, grinning. "Maybe. Or maybe it's just a good excuse for us to keep laughing." They spent the afternoon testing her theory in small ways. Mara sang quietly while watering the plants, her voice carrying in the soft wind. Elias recited old jokes and stories, some from his childhood, some from his long years on the frontier. Each time, they noticed small, subtle changes. The leaves grew brighter, the tubers seemed to swell slightly, the soil released a faint, sweet aroma. By evening, both of them were astonished. It wasn't just the plants. Even the homestead itself seemed to respond. The wind turbines spun more smoothly, the solar panels caught the sun better, and the small water collector hummed as if energized. The machines they had long maintained with care were now thriving alongside them, responding to their presence. "This is incredible," Elias said, leaning back against a wall, arms crossed. "I've lived here for decades, and I never realized. This place, it wants to live too." Mara nodded, her eyes reflecting the pale light of the setting twin moons. "It's like the planet has a memory, and it remembers the good we do. Maybe it's been waiting for someone to notice." They ate dinner quietly, the food tasting richer than ever. They didn't need to talk much. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with the soft understanding that they were not just surviving. They were part of something alive, something bigger than themselves. Later, Elias pulled out a small telescope he had built from old parts and set it up near the edge of the homestead. Mara joined him, eyes wide as she peered through the lens. The distant mountains shimmered with a strange, almost musical light, and in the sky above, stars gleamed brighter than any she had seen before. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Elias said, standing beside her. "More than that," she whispered. "It feels alive. Like the planet itself is watching, listening, even smiling." Elias chuckled. "Smiling? Huh? That's new. The planet never used to smile at me. Maybe it likes you." Mara laughed softly. "Maybe it does." The night passed with stories, laughter, and small experiments. They tried singing in harmony, telling jokes, even performing little dances among the plants. Each time, subtle changes occurred. The soil shifted, the wind blew more gently, and the small lights of the homestead seemed warmer. They were discovering something remarkable. Human presence, kindness, and joy weren't just emotional. They had tangible effects. This is what they mean by frontier human, Elias said suddenly, eyes glinting. Not just surviving, not just building or fixing. Making a place better just by being here. By caring. Mara smiled, leaning back against the wall. I never thought of it that way. I just wanted to survive. Now, I think we're thriving. Together. Elias looked at her, something soft and almost vulnerable in his eyes. Together, he agreed. I like that. For the first time, Mara saw beyond the gruff exterior of the old frontier man. She saw the heart that had kept the homestead alive through storms, through silence, through years of loneliness. She saw a human being who had survived not just because he was tough, but because he had hope, and because, deep down, he cared. The next morning, Mara woke to find Elias already outside, examining the solar panels. He glanced at her and smiled. Morning, he said. Ready to see what today brings? She nodded, pulling on her gloves and stepping outside. I think I'm ready. Let's see what the planet thinks of us today. As the sun rose, the red sands sparkled in a faint, golden glow. Mara and Elias worked together, tending the garden, adjusting the water systems, and laughing over small mistakes. Each laugh, each gentle word, each shared effort seemed to ripple outward, touching the soil, the plants, the homestead itself. By mid-afternoon, they noticed something new. Small buds had appeared on plants that hadn't bloomed before. Tiny flowers unfurled in colors. Mara had never seen shades of purple and gold that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. The planet, it seemed, was responding to them in real time, celebrating their presence, acknowledging their care. Elias shook his head in amazement. I've never seen anything like this. The frontier's full of surprises. But this is something else entirely, Mara smiled, brushing soil from her hands. It's proof, she said softly, that humans, our laughter, our care, our attention, can make a difference. Even here, on a planet so far away, so harsh, we can leave something positive behind. Elias looked at her, a quiet pride in his eyes. You've got a good way of putting things, Mara. Makes me almost want to write it down. Almost. She laughed. I'd read it. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of red and orange, reflecting off the twin moons that had risen again. The homestead glowed faintly, alive with warmth, laughter, and the quiet hum of machines and plants working in harmony. For the first time, both of them understood something profound. Survival was not enough. Living alone was not enough. What truly mattered, the thing that made them human, was care, laughter, connection. The frontier was harsh, but humans had something the planet responded to. Heart, compassion, humor, the will to make life better, not just for themselves, but for everything around them. And in that realization, they found purpose beyond survival. They were not just travelers, not just survivors. They were gardeners of life, architects of hope, stewards of a fragile, listening world. As night fell and the stars glittered like scattered diamonds, Mara and Elias sat side by side, sharing a quiet laugh at some small memory, some tiny joke. Around them, the planet responded: soft breezes, shimmering leaves, faint light pulsing from the soil. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. The frontier was vast and lonely. But tonight, under alien moons and a listening sky, two humans had made it a place of warmth, laughter, and life. And that, they realized together, was worth more than anything else. The next morning dawned clear, with sunlight spilling over the red plains like molten gold. Mara was kneeling in the garden, gently checking the alien tubers, while Elias moved between the solar panels and the small water collector. For weeks, this routine had become familiar, comforting a rhythm of survival, care, and laughter. But that morning, the hum of the wind and the whisper of the planet seemed different. There was a subtle tension in the air, like the world was holding its breath. Elias paused, hand on a panel, and squinted at the distant horizon. Something's coming, he muttered, more to himself than to Mara. She looked up from the soil, her brow furrowing. What do you mean? Elias gestured toward a faint shimmer on the horizon, where the red plains seemed to bend and ripple unnaturally. It's not natural. Something, or someone. By mid-morning, the shimmer resolved into a distant, hovering craft. Unlike the old exploration drones they had seen before, this was sleek and modern, glinting under the twin suns. A human craft, corporate in design, sterile and efficient, the opposite of Elias's rugged homestead. Mara straightened, brushing dirt from her hands. They're here for us, she said softly. The Resettlement Authority. They want to evacuate me. Elias frowned. Evacuate you? Why would they? You're safe here. Not according to them, Mara replied. They think I've been stranded too long, that the planet's too dangerous. They want to bring me to the nearest colony, make sure I'm productive in a more controlled environment. Elias's jaw tightened. He had spent years protecting the homestead, not just for himself, but because it had become a home, a living system that responded to human care. And now, someone wanted to take part of it away. Someone wanted to disrupt the fragile balance they had built. Mara approached him slowly. They'll take me whether I want to go or not. They're very insistent. Elias studied her face, the sunlight casting sharp shadows. And the planet? What will happen if you leave? She swallowed hard. I don't know exactly, but I think it might stop responding. The garden, the homestead, all of it. We've been part of something here. Elias, if I leave, that connection might be broken. He nodded slowly, understanding the weight of her words. They had discovered something remarkable together. Human presence, care, and laughter were not just emotional, they were essential to the planet's well-being. Taking one of them away could undo everything they had built. By noon, the craft had landed on the plain, small hatches lowering, and a quiet voice came over a loudspeaker. Mara Venn, you are to report to the Resettlement Authority. Compliance is recommended. Non-compliance may result in delayed extraction. Mara Venn. Looking down. Mara Venn. Mara Venn. Mara Venn. Mara Venn. Mara Venn. May result in delayed extraction. Mara glanced at Elias. They make it sound so polite. But I know how persistent they can be. They don't take no for an answer. Elias ran a hand through his graying hair. Then we have a choice. You stay, you leave, and we face the consequences. Whatever the planet decides, it's on us. For a long moment, they were silent, listening to the hum of the wind, the faint shimmer of life in the garden, and the soft pulse of the homestead. It felt as though the planet itself was holding its breath, waiting. I don't want to leave, Mara said finally, voice quiet but firm. Not here. Not now. This place. It matters. What we've started. It's bigger than survival. It's life. Elias's eyes softened. And yet, if you stay, you're choosing danger. They could insist. They could take you anyway. She shook her head. Not if I refuse. I can't go back. Not yet. Not until we see what this place can really become. The wind picked up, brushing red sand across the homestead in swirling patterns. Mara took a deep breath. Elias, I choose to stay. Not just for me, for the planet, for you, for everything we've grown here. He smiled faintly. A mixture of pride and relief. Then we'll make sure they understand that this isn't just a place. It's alive. And it's not theirs to control. The corporate craft hovered closer, a sleek metallic shadow over the glowing red soil. Mara stepped forward, raising her hands in a gesture of calm, not aggression. We're not resisting violence. But I won't leave this place. And neither will he. Inside the craft, sensors and monitors flickered, detecting the subtle changes in the planet, the way plants and soil pulsed in response to human presence. the faint harmonic vibrations of life, adjusting to care. The authorities' AI systems registered anomalies they couldn't explain. The faster growth of plants, the warming of soil, the synchronized energy from the homestead. Elias and Mara didn't have weapons, didn't threaten. They simply stood together, their presence steady, their laughter quiet but unwavering. And the planet responded. Leaves quivered in the small garden. Tiny flowers bloomed in radiant colors. The soil shimmered faintly, and the homestead lights pulsed warmly. The air seemed to hum with a gentle resonance, as though the entire world was supporting their choice. Inside the craft, the AI paused, unable to determine the cause. Humans alone shouldn't have this effect, but here, they did. The system ran analysis after analysis, but every calculation failed. The planet had an unexpected ally: human care, attention, and joy. Elias glanced at Mara. See? It's listening. We're not alone. Mara smiled, taking his hand briefly. Then we'll do this together. Whatever happens. The craft's loudspeaker crackled again. Final warning. Mara Ven. Compliance required. Mara took a deep breath. And this time her voice was firm, carrying across the plain. I will not leave. Not now. Not ever. This planet, and the life here, needs us. And we choose to stay. For a moment, silence hung in the air. The only sound was the wind and the faint hum of the homestead. Then, slowly, the lights on the craft dimmed. The hatches retracted. The craft lifted, scanning one last time, then turned and flew away, leaving only a thin trail of shimmering dust. Elias exhaled, leaning heavily against a post. Well, that's one way to make a point. Mara laughed softly, brushing red dust from her hands. It seems the universe likes stubborn humans. They returned to the homestead, where the garden glowed faintly under the twin moons. The plants had responded again, more vibrantly than ever. It was as if the planet itself had approved their choice, reinforcing the fragile, beautiful system they had nurtured. I think, Elias said quietly, we just learned something important. That humans, we don't just survive. We can shape life itself. Not by force, not by taking, but by caring, by laughing, by being here. Mara nodded. That's the HFY truth, isn't it? That our presence, our choices, our kindness can make a difference. Even on a world far from home, they spent the rest of the night tending the garden, sharing stories, and testing small experiments. Mara hummed while watering the plants. Elias recited jokes and little anecdotes. Each moment of laughter, each careful action, seemed to ripple outward, strengthening the bond between them and the planet. By the time dawn arrived, the homestead and garden were alive in a way that was almost magical. Plants stretched toward the light, roots pulsed faintly in the soil, and the air carried a sweet, gentle aroma. Elias and Mara stood together, hands clasped, looking over their small domain. We made the right choice, Mara said softly. Yes, Elias replied, eyes reflecting the glow of the rising suns. We didn't just survive. We chose life. And somehow, the planet agreed. They shared a quiet laugh, a gentle celebration of the bond they had forged and the living world they were now part of. The frontier was still vast, still lonely. But they had discovered a truth that would carry them forward. Humanity, with all its care, humor, and resilience, could leave a mark even on distant worlds. And in that choice, choosing to stay, choosing to nurture, choosing to laugh, they found purpose beyond survival. They were not just two humans on a distant planet. They were stewards of life, keepers of hope, and part of a living, listening world. Outside, the twin moons rose high, casting a silver glow over the homestead. Inside, laughter lingered, quiet but persistent, and in that soft, human sound, the planet seemed to breathe with them, acknowledging that the future would be shaped not by fear or force, but by care, choice, and the simple, profound strength of being human. The first light of dawn painted the red plains in a warm, golden hue. The twin moons had faded into the brightening sky, leaving the horizon empty except for jagged mesas and the small, sturdy homestead that had become a beacon of life. Elias Cade stepped outside, stretching his stiff joints, and glanced at the garden. Mara was already tending to the alien tubers, her hands moving skillfully over the soil. Tiny flowers unfurled in colors more vibrant than he remembered, and the herbs released a fragrant scent that mingled with the crisp morning air. "Morning," he called. Mara looked up, smiling. "Morning. Sleep well?" "Better than I have in years," he replied, leaning against a post. "I think the planet agrees with us." She laughed softly. "It's not just the planet. We're learning together. Every day." The weeks had passed quickly since their choice to stay. Mara and Elias had formed a rhythm, blending survival with discovery. Every day was filled with laughter, work, and the quiet wonder of seeing life respond to their presence. The homestead and garden had grown stronger, almost as if the planet itself recognized their dedication. "Do you ever think about what's next?" Mara asked one morning, kneeling by a cluster of purple flowers that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. Elias paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "Next, we survive. We laugh. We care. And maybe, we see how far this place can go." Mara smiled. "I think we're already seeing it." That afternoon, a soft hum rippled through the soil. Mara looked up, curious. "Do you hear that?" Elias nodded slowly. "I do. It's subtle, but it's the planet." They followed the vibrations to the far edge of the garden, where the soil pulsed faintly beneath their feet. Tiny shoots of alien plants had appeared overnight, stretching toward the sky with strange, delicate grace. Mara reached out to touch one, and it seemed to respond, leaning toward her hand. "It's like it's alive." "Really alive," she whispered. Elias chuckled. "And we're part of it. Our laughter, our care. It matters here. Who would have thought humans could do this?" Mara laughed softly, a warm, melodic sound that seemed to echo across the plains. "I always thought humans could survive anything. I didn't realize we could make life bloom this far from home." Their bond had grown stronger than either had expected. They shared stories, jokes, and memories long buried. Every day, they learned more about each other and themselves. Mara's curiosity and optimism softened Elias's gruff exterior, and his patience and quiet wisdom grounded her restless energy. By evening, the homestead glowed under the twin moons once more. Mara and Elias sat on the small bench outside, watching the garden shimmer in silver light. "You know," Mara said, "I never imagined life could feel like this. Not just surviving, but thriving. Not just existing, but making a difference." Elias nodded. "It's what being human is all about. Not just staying alive, but caring, laughing, building, leaving something behind. Even on a planet like this. Jenner on a palm. As well be ice. Jenner on a palm. Jenner on a palm." A gentle breeze stirred, carrying the scent of the alien herbs. The plants seemed to pulse in response, almost as if they were breathing with the humans who had nurtured them. Elias leaned back, eyes scanning the horizon. "I think the frontier's finally listening," he said softly. Mara laughed, nudging him gently. "The frontier? You mean us?" He grinned. "Us, yes. Humans make the frontier smile." Over the next few days, the homestead became a small center of life. Mara experimented with new ways to encourage plant growth, blending her knowledge of earth biology with the alien soil. Elias improved the water collection systems and repaired old machines, all the while discovering new ways the planet responded to care, attention, and laughter. One evening, as the twin moons rose, a strange phenomenon occurred. Tiny lights flickered across the horizon, rising from the plains like fireflies. Mara gasped. "Elias, look!" He followed her gaze, It's incredible. The planet, it's responding to us, to our presence. The lights danced across the plains, moving rhythmically, almost playfully. Mara and Elias stood together, laughing in awe, realizing that their small acts of care, their stories, and their laughter had created a ripple that reached across the land. This is more than survival, Mara whispered. We're part of something alive, something beautiful. Elias nodded. We've always known humans could endure anything. But this shows we can create, too. Build life. Leave a mark. Not with force, but with heart. Days turned into weeks, and their influence spread. Small creatures, previously hidden in the rocky plains, began to emerge, curious about the humans and their shimmering garden. Birds with delicate metallic feathers landed near the homestead, inspecting the plants. The soil pulsed gently underfoot, responding to every careful touch. Mara realized something profound. This is the frontier laughing back, she said. Elias smiled. The frontier and humans. Together. One morning, while tending the alien tubers, Mara noticed a small sprout unlike any they had seen before. Its leaves shimmered with gold and silver, reflecting the twin suns in intricate patterns. She called Elias over. This is remarkable, he said. It's like the planet is showing gratitude. A gift. Something new. Mara knelt beside it, gently brushing the soil around the roots. It's proof, she whispered, that humans, with kindness, care, and laughter, can leave a mark that matters, even on worlds far from home. Elias leaned back, eyes on the horizon. HFY, he murmured, using the phrase they had joked about earlier. Humans for the win. Not because we're strongest, not because we conquer, but because we care. We laugh, we nurture. That's our power. Mara laughed softly. I like that. Humans for the win. Sounds about right. The weeks passed. Each day a mix of work, laughter, and quiet wonder. Mara experimented with new recipes, blending alien herbs into meals that both delighted and surprised them. Elias shared stories of the early frontier days, of explorers who had faced harsh conditions with courage, humor, and determination. The homestead thrived, as did the garden, as did the humans themselves. One night, as they sat together watching the stars, Mara asked, Do you ever think about leaving? Elias shook his head. Not anymore. I've found what matters. Not just surviving, but living, laughing, caring, sharing this frontier life with someone who understands. That's enough. She leaned against him. It's more than enough. It's perfect. The homestead glowed in the soft moonlight. The garden shimmering. The soil pulsing faintly. The planet was alive. Listening. Responding. And the humans within it, two strangers who had chosen to stay, to nurture, to laugh, were alive too. In a way they had never been before. Months passed, and the homestead became a small hub of life. Other travelers, curious explorers, and lost wanderers began arriving, drawn to the stories of a small human settlement that had made the planet bloom. Mara and Elias welcomed them, teaching the lessons they had learned. That care, laughter, and connection mattered more than technology or power. That even in the harshest frontier, humans could thrive, not by force, but by heart. The homestead grew into a community, but it never lost its quiet charm. Laughter echoed through the garden. Meals were shared beneath the twin moons, and the planet pulsed in harmony with its human caretakers. Mara and Elias remained at the center, not as rulers, but as guides, mentors, and friends. One evening, Mara turned to Elias, watching the twin moons rise. Do you think we could have imagined all this when we first arrived? Elias chuckled, taking her hand. No, but maybe that's the point. Life is never predictable. The frontier, humans, laughter, care. Together, They create something no one could imagine. Mara smiled, leaning into him. The frontier laughs back, doesn't it? Elias grinned. It does. And we made it laugh. Under alien stars, among shimmering plants and vibrant soils, two humans had discovered something extraordinary. That survival was not the greatest achievement. That laughter and care could shape worlds. And that being human meant more than enduring. It meant creating life, nurturing hope, and leaving a mark of compassion wherever they went. And as the twin moons shone over the flourishing homestead, the frontier hummed with quiet joy. Laughter echoed across the red plains, carried on the wind, reflecting in the pulse of the soil, the shimmer of alien plants, and the hearts of two humans who had chosen to stay, to care, and to laugh. For Elias Cade and Mara Venn, the frontier was no longer lonely. It was alive, vibrant, and welcoming. And somewhere in its vastness, it had learned the greatest lesson of all, that humans, with all their humor, care, and resilience, could make the universe itself smile.